has been a life changing experience, a person for both Siddharth and me. Siddharth got introduced to Dr. Rao early last year, and Dr. Rao has been a life coach. He does um, coaching for um, industry professionals, people, and he's a very spiritually connected person. So without taking much time and talking more about Dr. Rao, I'd like all of you to hear it directly from him. And sir has been very kind to give us time, and I'm very excited about this session today and look forward to hearing what Dr. Rao has to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Gautam. Thank you, Siddharth. Just a quick check. I want to be sure that all of you are hearing me loud and clear. If you are, just raise your right hand to let me know. Okay, you are hearing me. Wonderful. So it is my pleasure. So Gautam and Siddharth have been my coaching clients for more than a year now, nearly 2 years. And it's been an absolute pleasure working with them. And the reason it's a pleasure is not only because they are personally open to growth, but they have a vision for the business and the country that I completely resonate with. So it is my great pleasure to speak to you. You are educators, and as such, you are not only responsible for your personal growth, but the growth of young minds who later are going to be part of society, and they're going to shape both society and through society, the country. And it is my pleasure to be a small part of this. Let me begin by addressing a question which has been an issue for people worldwide. And this is the whole notion of stress. I have asked thousands of people on 6 continents, do you have stress in your life? And virtually everyone says, yes, there is stress in my life. And there is more stress in my life now than there has ever been. And I'm fairly sure that that is true of you as well. So again, just to get a show, how many of you feel that you're under stress right now? Please raise your right hands if you feel that you're under stress. See, a whole bunch of you. Wonderful. Okay. Now, of course, what I also did is when people say that they have stress in their lives, I also ask, why do you feel that you have stress in your life? And they came back with dozens of reasons. And I sorted them into broad categories, and I'm going to share some of those categories with you. Number one is financial. I don't have enough. There are all kind of expenses coming up. There is rent, there is mortgage, there is children's tuition fees, there is unexpected illness, and somehow or other it seems as though I don't have enough zeros in my bank account. I can't deal with it. So financial stress is one important part. Another is relationships, typically with partner or spouse, but could be with children, with in-laws, with relatives, with work colleagues, with bosses. You would like relationships to be harmonious, but they're not. They're fraught, they're prickly, they're fights, and that causes stress in your life. Reason number three are children. Now, we all know what children are, right? Children are bundles of joy sent to bring meaning to your life and source of great joy. And they are. But at the same time, Children do the darndest thing and they begin early. They poop right after you change them. They fall in love with the most inappropriate people. They drop out of school. So children can be a source of meaning and pleasure, but they can also add significantly to the stress in your life. Then there is health. I don't have to say too much about that in times of COVID. But apart from COVID, there is stuff like Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's floating around. And many of you have parents and elderly relatives, and it hurts to see them in the grip of these diseases. So that is an important stressor. Then there is your career. Given your smarts, given your hard work, you expect it to be at a certain point in your life right now, and it's just not where you would like to be. And of course, there is the big. There is too much to do, and I don't have enough time to do it all. And this gets virtually everyone. Please, once again, raise your hands if you could say, I have too much to do and I don't have enough time to do it all. Got you all, right? That is the reason why, those are the reasons why people say that I have stress in my life. And I will wager that every single one of you can raise your hands for one or more of these. But I want to share something with you. You're wrong. These are not the reasons why you have stress in your life. You think that these are the reasons why you have stress in your life, but that's not the real reason. The real reason you have stress in your life is because you've got a very rigid view. This is the way the world should unfold. And the world pays no attention to what you would like to have happen and goes its own merry way. You think, I should have enough money in my bank account to meet all my bills as they come due. But the world pays no attention to it and goes on in its way. You think relationships should be, at least your relationships should be harmonious, and people disagree with you. And they disagree with you in a disagreeable way. And you resist it, and you resent it, and in that resistance and in that non acceptance, you create the stress in your life. And that is the only reason you have stress in your life. Think about it. I'm stating categorically that you do not feel stress in your life because of the reasons that you outlined, but you have stress in your life because the universe pays no attention to your wants and it unfolds in its own merry way. And the way it unfolds is not the way that you would like it to be. And you resent this, you resist it, and in that resistance and resentment, you create the stress in your life. And that is the only reason you feel stress in your life. Now, this ties into something else, and that is that you're a control freak. Your entire life, you have been trying to control some part of your internal or external environment. Everything, but everything you do is an attempt to control some part of your internal or external environment. Do you have children? Why do you have children? You have children because you thought, when I have children, there's going to be pleasure seeing them smile, play with them. They're an extension of me. And it's such a joy being around children. They bring purpose to my life. So let's go ahead. It was an attempt to control some part of your internal or external environment. Did you go to school, college, postgraduate? Why did you do that? Because you felt, well, if I do that, I'm going to learn things, and my mind is going to be enlarged, I'll get gainful employment, and I'll certainly be better off than if I never went to an educational institution at all. It was an attempt to control some part of your internal or external environment. Everything but everything you do, have done in your life has been an attempt to control some part of your internal or external environment. I have some good news to share with you. You might not think it's good news, but it is. You do not have control. You never had control. You never will have control. Control is a myth, it's an illusion. You do not have control, but you do have the illusion of control. And the illusion of control comes about because at some point in your life, you were in a position A and you wanted to move to position B. And you said, if I do X, Y, and Z, I'll move from position A to position B. And you did it, and it happened. You moved. And it's happened many times in your life, and it's happened many times in the lives of those you know around you. And therefore you see, I did it, I have control. In reality, any of a number of things could have happened to derail you, and they did not happen. So be grateful, be immensely, immensely grateful. But don't think that you do have control. One of the beauties, if you can call it that, of the pandemic is that it has brought home in a visceral level to you that you do not have control. The pandemic has caused untold misery and untold suffering. But one good thing that it has done is it has revealed to you that you really do not have control. And this is important because even when you accept the fact that you don't have control, you still think of it at a superficial level. By that, I mean, you say, my marriage is on the rocks. I don't know if it'll survive. I don't have control. Or you might think, my business is foundering. I don't know if it'll survive. I don't have control. But underneath that, you still had certain things that you felt were given, such as if I want to go to Mumbai, assuming you're not in Mumbai already, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get on a plane or a train and it'll get me there. Or if there's no food in the house, I'll go to a restaurant, order off the menu. As a result of the pandemic, even those things were called into question. So you really realized at a visceral level that you do not have control. And I'm sure every single one of you has experienced in your life some situation which was so unexpected, so totally out of left field that it threw all of your plans into a cocked hat. It has happened to you before, it will happen again. So, the illusion of control is a wonderful thing. I am not knocking it at all. The illusion of control is what makes you get up in the morning, what makes you make plans, what makes you set goals for yourself and strive to achieve the goal. This is absolutely wonderful. I'm not knocking it. But use the illusion of control, knowing that it is the illusion of control, and at some point in your life, it is going to break down. It has done so before, and it will do so again. So if you use the illusion of control, knowing that it is the illusion of control, Then when it breaks down, you simply say, this is the time it broke down. Where do I go from here? But if you use the illusion of control, not knowing that it is the illusion of control, that is the time when you go to pieces. Okay. Now, I frequently get pushback when I share this with my audiences. Professor Rao, you're going too far, you're going overboard. I may not have complete control, but I have some control. I have influence. That's like saying, my wife is a little bit pregnant. If it makes you comfortable to say or think that you have some influence, some degree of control, by all means, go ahead. But understand that there are always X factors that are shaping what you experience and what happens in your world and the world outside. Okay. So if you have no control, never had control, never will have control, how can you use that knowledge to live a life without stress? And I am saying that it is possible for you to live a life with zero stress. Let me repeat that. We're not talking about lessening stress, we're talking about eliminating stress, eradicating it altogether. This is possible, but it requires significant dedicated effort on your part. And I'm going to share the things that you can do to reach that state. But even if you do not master all of them, if you even try a few of those methods in a desultory fashion, you will find that stress decreases markedly in your life. So let's begin. One important thing I want you to think about is that your awareness is like a flashlight, a torch. What does a torch do? A torch lights up anything that you shine it on. Shine it on the floor, it lights up the floor. Shine it on the ceiling, it lights up the ceiling. Your awareness is like a flashlight. And I'm going to prove it to you right now. I want you to take the flashlight of your awareness and shine it on the chair on which you are sitting. And the moment I ask you to do that, you become aware of the pressure of your buttocks on the seat. You become aware of the fabric or the leather against the back of your thighs. Is that right? 30 seconds ago, you were not aware of any of this, but now you are aware of it. Why? Because you shone the flashlight of your awareness on it. Where do we typically shine the flashlight of our awareness? Typically, we shine the flashlight of our awareness on the problems in our life, on the 2, 3, or 4 things that we think are wrong in our lives. But what about the 40, 50, or 200 things that are actually pretty good about our lives? We never shine the flashlight of our awareness on that, and therefore it disappears unseen and unacknowledged. Now, every single one of you on this call is incredibly privileged. Do you recognize that? You have food to eat, you have a bed to sleep in, you have a roof over your head. You are incredibly, incredibly privileged. Just look around you at the enormous poverty, lack of education, lack of basic necessities that is. Now, when I point this out, you nod your head, yes, yes, you are incredibly privileged. But you don't feel incredibly privileged, you feel stressed out. And the reason for that is Where do you shine the flashlight of your awareness? Where do you shine the torch of your awareness? You're so busy shining it on the problems in your life, and even that isn't true. You're not shining it on the problems in your life, you're shining it in what you think are the problems in your life. And really, every problem that you have is an opportunity, but that is something that is a subject in itself for an entire webinar. So, starting immediately, start shining the torch of your awareness on the things that are good in your life, the things that you recognize you're fortunate in having, and keep it there. I would say a good way to do that is to begin last thing at night before you go to bed. And when you get up in the morning, don't go immediately to the space of, I have too much to do and not enough time to do it all. Recall the many ways in which you're truly fortunate and blessed. And bring up that feeling of gratitude. Wallow in it, marinate in it, soak yourself in it, shower in it. As you go through your day, periodically, constantly bring up the ways in which you're fortunate. Consciously think about it. And if you do this consistently, you will find that gradually the thinking about the ways in which you're fortunate becomes an experiencing of the ways in which you are, and gratitude will well up inside you. And this is very important. It is my hope that every single one of you will live in the default emotional domain of appreciation and gratitude. And why is that important? The reason that's important is because when you're in the default emotional domain of appreciation and gratitude, you are no longer angry, you're no longer nervous, you're no longer anxious, fearful. The two cannot coexist. So, another very important concept. This actually comes from an old Sufi tale. It talks about a man and his son, and they lived in a beautiful valley and they were very happy, but they were also very poor. And the man got sick and tired of being poor, and he decided that he was going to become a rich man. And the way he's going to become a rich man is by breeding horses. So he bought a stallion. And the stallion, the very day he got it, kicked the top bar loose from the paddock where he housed it and ran away. And all the neighbors came around saying, you were going to become a rich man, but now your stallion has run away and you still owe us money. You are screwed. And the man shrugged his shoulder and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? That stallion fell in with a group of wild horses that were living close to where the man and his son were, and he was able to entice them into the paddock which he had repaired, so escape was no longer possible. And all of a sudden, he had his stallion back, plus a dozen wild horses, which, by the standards of that village, made him a wealthy man. And the neighbors came around and said, we thought you were destitute, but fortune has smiled upon you. How lucky you are. And the man shrugged his shoulders and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? The man and his son started to break the horses so they could sell them on the market. And one of the horses threw the man's son, and it stomped on his leg, and it broke, and it healed crooked. And the neighbors came around commiserating. He was such a fine young lad, and I will never be able to find a girl to marry him. How sad. And the man shrugged his shoulder and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? That summer, the king of the country declared war on a neighboring country, and press gangs moved through the villages, rounding up all the able-bodied young men to serve in the army. But this man's son was spared because he had a game leg. And the neighbors had tears in their eyes as they rolled around. We don't know if we'll ever see our sons alive, but you still have your son. How fortunate you are. And the man shrugged his shoulder and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? And it goes on like that forever. Now, I have a question for you. Have you ever experienced something in your life that at the time it happened, you thought this was terrible, this is a tragedy? But now, with the wisdom of age and passage of time, you look back and say, hey, that wasn't so terrible after all. Or maybe even that was a good thing. Has that happened in your life? Please raise your hands if it did. Once again, so each of you can recognize that something happened in your life that at the time it happened, you said this is terrible, but now you can see it wasn't so terrible after all. So here's my question to you. If something happened in your life that at the time it happened, you thought was terrible, but now you can look back upon it and say, no, it wasn't so terrible after all. Is it possible that what today you are about to label this is terrible could in X years turn out to be a good thing? Is it possible? Just asking yourself that question will move you to a different emotional domain. Here is something, oh, this is a great tragedy, this is terrible, it's happening to me. Just ask yourself, is it true? Is it necessarily true? And just asking yourself that question will move you to a different emotional domain. And if you then ask yourself the next question, what can I do to actually make this a good thing? And you find that you move seamlessly from the realm of despair to the realm of possibility. This is how you become incredibly resilient. Because understand that what is really plaguing you is not what is happening out there, but the story you tell yourself about what is happening out there. There is something called mental chatter. Mental chatter is an internal monologue that's happening in your head all the time, all the time. It is there when you get up in the morning. It is there with you right now. When out of politeness, you ought to be listening to my chatter instead of your chatter. How many of you in the time that I have been speaking have already gone someplace else? What is for dinner? What do I have to do tomorrow? Do I really have time to be on this webinar? It's late in the evening. I want to go to bed. And if you had that, I rest my case. That's mental chatter. Mental chatter is like an unwelcome relative who's shown up in your house and you can't kick him out. So what do? You live your life as best you can with your mental chatter. You ignore it, you suppress it, you work around it, and you live your life as best you can with your mental chatter. That is a big mistake. Ignoring your mental chatter is a huge mistake. And the reason for that is because you build your life with your mental chatter. You think you live in a real world. You don't live in a real world. You live in a construct. You build it, and you build it with your mental chatter and your mental models. You're all living in a matrix, an artificial construct. And I'm going to illustrate it with a powerful teaching of the Buddha. This is known as the parable of the second arrow. And the Buddha asked Ananda, his disciple, Ananda, if an arrow were to hit you in the arm, would it not be very painful? And Ananda nodded, yes, Lord, it would be very painful. And if a second arrow would have hit you exactly where the first arrow hit you, would it not be even more painful? And again, Ananda said, yes, Lord, it would be even more painful. And then the Buddha asked a surprising question. Why then do you shoot the second arrow? And I notice a number of you are puzzled, so let me explain. And I'll explain by means of a story. There was a woman, very successful, and she had a very, very, very messy divorce. And it was so painful that it took her a very, very long time to recover from it. But eventually she did recover from it, and she said, okay, I'm now ready to look around. And she did all the normal things. She went to the internet site, she filled in her profile, and she came across this person. He was an entrepreneur, very successful, very funny. And after a few weeks of talking on the phone and the internet, they decided to meet. And she was all excited. She bought a new dress and they met in an upscale cafe. And 15 minutes into that meeting, he gets up, he throws his napkin on the table, and he says, I'm not interested, and he walks out. And she was crushed. She was so crushed, so drained of energy, that the only thing she could do was call her friend. And her friend said, well, why are you surprised? You have fat hips, you've got nothing interesting to say. Why would a handsome, intelligent, successful man pay any attention to you? Are you shocked that a friend would say something like that at this juncture? Probably. Would you be less shocked if I said it wasn't what a friend told her, it's what she told herself? Probably not. That is the second arrow. And the interesting thing about it is the second arrow is always delivered by means of mental chatter. Let me repeat that. The second arrow is always delivered by means of mental chatter. Now, let me share something with you, and I want you to think about it with regard to your life. No matter what situation you are confronting, your mental chatter about that situation is making it at least an order of magnitude worse, or maybe many orders of magnitude worse. If you can look at and recognize that, once again, please raise your hands. Your mental chatter about the situation you're facing is making it many orders of magnitude worse than it is. That is the second arrow. And for my coaching clients and people who take my course, if I could get them to stop at the second arrow, they'd be way ahead of the game. Most of the time, when they recognize what's happening, they're already on their fifth, sixth, or 200th arrows. There is a very funny saying by a famous American author, but it's also very profound and very true. It was Mark Twain who said, I have suffered a great many tragedies in my life, most of which never happened. And I see that you're smiling, and it is funny, but it is also profoundly true. I have suffered a great many tragedies in my life, most of which never happened. Now we go through our life, and as we go through our life, we believe that some things are true, and they're indisputably true. All of those are not necessarily truths, they're mental models. A mental model is a notion you have that this is the way the world works. And you have dozens of models, maybe hundreds of models. Some of these models may be in conflict with each other and you don't even recognize the conflict. The problem is not that you have mental models. The problem is that you don't recognize that you have mental models. But you're so strongly wedded to them that you believe that this is the way the world works. And the more you believe in it, the more it seems as if this is the way the world works. And very soon you're entrenched in a silo that you cannot break out of. Because remember, the world, you do not see the world as it is. You always see the world as you are. Let me repeat that. You never see the world as it is. You always see the world as you are. And you're very hung up shining the flashlight of your awareness of the problems in your life. And it's reflected everywhere in the world. Oh my God, look at what a mess the world is in. And you shine the flashlight of your awareness on the many ways in which you're truly fortunate and blessed, and the world appears rosy. This does not mean that there are not severe problems that you need to take care of, but you need to take care of it from the emotional domain of appreciation and gratitude. And when you do that, you will find that you're far, far, far more successful. Now, every single one of you lives in a me centered world. You believe that Galileo was wrong. The earth does not revolve around the sun, the earth revolves around you. And how do I know that? I know that because no matter what happens, you very quickly turn it down to what's the impact on me. Your partner gets a great job offer, and you immediately think, how is this going to affect our relationship? Your son drops out of high school, and you go, what will they think about my parenting, and what are going to be the consequences for me? No matter what happens outside, you have a great, great, great ability to bring it down to what's the impact on me. We all live in a me centered universe. And here's something I want to share. If you live in a me centered universe, that's where you spend most of your time. You are going to live a mediocre existence, punctuated with flashes of pleasure, but ultimately unsatisfactory. The only way you're going to get to a place where you're radiantly alive every day, where you have deep meaning and purpose suffusing you, is if you can find a cause which is bigger than you are, a cause which brings a greater good to a greater community. Unless you can find that and embed yourself in that, you're going to find you live a mediocre life. Ancient England, site of a great cathedral being constructed, and the architect moving to the scenic construction came across three people, all of whom were doing the exact same thing. They were taking a block of stone, placing it on a bigger block of stone, and beating it with a hammer till it broke. And he asked the first guy, what are you doing? He says, can you see I'm breaking rocks? Well, why are you doing it? I get paid a half a day. And the second guy said, I'm helping build the wall behind me. And the third guy said, I'm helping build a cathedral. And when it is over, people will come from all over the world and they will be impressed. And I will have had a small role to play in that. And the third one was the only one who recognized the architect, who said, truth be told, I don't like doing it. I can get better wages for less effort. And I'm only doing it because I want to learn. Will you teach me to build a cathedral? And 20 years from that day, the guy who was breaking rocks was dead. He no longer had the strength to swing a hammer, and he died. The person who was building the wall behind him was living a life of desperate poverty. But the person who was helping build a cathedral was on his way to building his first cathedral. That is a choice that each one of you has every day. Let me repeat that. That is a choice each one of you has every day. You can break rocks or you can build a cathedral. And you're fortunate because you're educators and your impact is going to be on hundreds of students over the years and over your lifetime, perhaps many thousands of them. And you can break rocks. You can go there and say, I have to get this through this curriculum and I get through it as fast as I possibly can. And I do a good job, but I'm concerned about my salary and I'm concerned about, the things that are wrong in my life. Or you can go to work and say, each day is a noble cause. Each day I'm helping shape some part of my students' worldview. And they're going to go up and they're going to go into different fields and politics and business and career, and they're going to get married and have families. And the impact they're going to have on this diverse thing will come, at least in part, because of the ideas that I implant in their heads. It's your choice. You can break rocks or you can build cathedrals. I cannot define for you the cathedral that you're going to build. You're the only person who can do that. But I can tell you that if you do not define the cathedral you are going to build, then you're going to live an essentially mediocre life, punctuated with flashes of pleasure, but ultimately meaningless. Don't do that. Another thing that I want to share with you is I shared earlier that you do not have control, you never had control, you never will have control. So why should you do anything? Why set goals? Why strive for them? The reason is an incorrect understanding we have. We believe that the reason we set a goal and strive to achieve a goal, we believe the benefit is achieving the goal. Not so. The benefit of setting a goal and trying your level best to achieve the goal is the learning and growth that happen in you and to you as you try your level best to achieve the goal. If you actually achieve the goal, that's a bonus. Be grateful, be immensely grateful. If you don't achieve the goal, the learning and growth have already happened. So you're ahead of the game. There's no way that you can lose. Because when you're obsessively focused upon the goal, you miss the journey. And the journey is the only thing you have. The journey is with you forever. The destination is a mirage. You get there, you tarry a few minutes, and then you go someplace else. The journey is always with you. So if you're going to live a meaningful life, focus on the journey. Enjoy every minute of it. People say, I want to climb Mount Everest. How much time do you spend on top of Mount Everest? A few minutes to a half hour max. You get up there, your buddy takes a picture of you, your buddy gets up there, you take a picture of him, and then you're on your way down and you hope you don't get killed in an avalanche. So if you're going to climb Mount Everest, you better enjoy the weeks and months of acclimatization on base camp 1, base camp 2, and the rest. Life is exactly like that. You have a goal, you focus on it, and that's wonderful. But if you're obsessively focused on it, you miss the journey. And the journey is with you always. The journey is the only thing you have. So, by all means, set a goal for yourself, try your level best to achieve that goal, but recognize that the journey is where you are going to survive and thrive. The journey is the only thing that is. There are a couple of other concepts I want to share with you, and then I do want to we have time for questions. So, Siddharth, would we do me a favor? I notice a number of questions have been coming in with the chat. I can't. Would you look through those and you select the more important ones, which you will then read out to me, and I will answer them. Okay?
Yes. So I would invite everybody to put more and more questions in the chat, and I'll pick them out.
Absolutely. And also, we are supposed to go on till 10:30, but I am flexible and I will stay and some more time and answer questions if you have them. And I'm
Sure.
delighted to see the level of engagement that I am seeing with you. It's truly been a pleasure addressing you. So let me share two other concepts with you. One of them, again, comes from the Native American tradition. There was a young man who was growing up to become part of the tribe, and the final rite of passage was a conversation with the medicine man. And the medicine man told the boy, "Here is a dog, kind, loving, intelligent, trustworthy. And here is a wolf, malevolent, vicious, eager to kill anyone. And the dog and the wolf are fighting. And the dog and the wolf are both inside you." And the young man asks, "Which one's going to win?" And the medicine man says, "Whichever one you feed." Now think about it. Inside each one of you are altruistic, let's help each other and make the world a better place impulses. And in each one of you are, let me grab everything I can for myself and the devil take the hindmost impulses. Now, it is your job to selectively identify and feed the dog in you. It's also your job to selectively identify and feed the dog in everyone around you. But all too often, you feed the wolf and you don't even know you're feeding the wolf. Let's say you've had a difficult time in your class teaching and you go to the teacher's room in a break. And when you do that, another of your fellow teachers comes up and says, "Oh, I'm having a hard day." And you say, "You're having a hard day? Let me tell you about my hard day." And your hard day easily tops her hard day, and you go off feeling smug. You've just fed the wolf, both in yourself and the other person. If instead you had gone, "You're having a hard day, I'm having a hard day, we both work here. Is there anything we can collectively do to make sure that nobody has such a hard day again?" And now we have started feeding the dog. So think about it in every interaction that you have with everyone, with your fellow teachers, with your principals, with your students, with your work colleagues, with the auto rickshaw driver who takes you to the station or the airport. What are you doing? Are you speaking? Are you behaving in a manner which leaves that person more positive about himself, herself, or the world around? Are you leaving them with optimism, or are you pushing them into a downward vortex? Are you feeding the dog, or are you feeding the wolf? Ask yourself that of every transaction, every interaction you have with every person. Am I feeding the dog or am I feeding the wolf? And the funny thing is, as you start feeding the dog in others, you're simultaneously feeding the dog in you. And when the dog in you becomes friends with the dog in the other person, magic happens in both of your lives. And the final concept I want to share with you is that of the civil engineer. Let's assume that I'm a county executive and I call you into my office and I want a road built from here to here. And where the road has to be built, there is a mountain, a forest, and a swamp. Do you get angry at the mountain, the forest, and the swamp? Of course not. That's the terrain you've been given. And your skill as a civil engineer comes in. How are you going to get the road built? Are you going to go over the obstacles, under the obstacles, around the obstacles, through the obstacles? That's your job. You're a civil engineer. And if it turns out that the mountain is made of granite and the swamp is unusually deep, you might think in terms of raising your fees, but apart from that, it'll have no impact on you. In exactly the same way, you are the civil engineer. The road you're building is your road to a meaningful, purposeful life filled with joy. And all of the problems that you're encountering, including the problem people in your life, they're the forests, the mountains, the swamps. You don't get angry at them. You figure out how you're going to get your road built despite them. So every time you find you're losing your cool, every time you're being overwhelmed, just ask yourself, am I being a civil engineer? Your job is to get your road built. Getting angry at the obstacles accomplishes nothing. So once again, every time you're overwhelmed, every time you're angry, just ask yourself, am I being a civil engineer? And with that, we are done with the formal part of it, but I would be delighted to take up the questions. So Siddharth, can you go to the questions that you had before as well as this and pick them up? And if you could ask everyone to please unmute the video so I can see the audience, that would be helpful.
Yes, absolutely. I think, Dr. Rao, this has been, so we've been doing this for about 2.5, 3 years now, but clearly this has been one of the most engaging sessions that we've had on CC Friday, and we've had this session on a Thursday. So yes, I'm just going to read out some questions from the chat.
Yeah.
The first one comes that how do we bring the awareness in our day-to-day life in every activity that we step on?
Yes, that is an excellent question. And the point is that you have to work hard to accomplish that. Let me show you one tool which I have found to be very helpful, and I'll share that with you right now. I'm sure that all of you have smartphones. So here is an example of my smartphones with the alarms, and you can see how many I have. So what I used to do is I used to set alarms to beep at irregular intervals, 20 or 30 of them a day, sometimes even more. And every time I hear the beep is a chance for me to think, am I observing my mental chatter or am I being my mental chatter? Mental chatter is not a problem. Mental chatter is like clouds in the sky. You look up at the sky and there are clouds, and 10 minutes later you look up again and those clouds are gone, they're replaced by new clouds. Mental chatter is like that, it simply is. The problem is not that you have mental chatter, the problem is that you identify with your mental chatter. And when you identify with your mental chatter, it has a tremendous capacity to take you to all kinds of places you don't want to go. So that is a very good tip. You know, you set alarms and every time it beeps, that's a reminder to you to get back to awareness. And there are other things that you can do. You can train yourself with certain stimuli. You know, the phone rings, you have a beep as an email comes into your box, or you hear a voice outside, and you can have each one of these become your stimulus to start thinking about your mental chatter and become the observer rather than identifying with your mental chatter. Next question, Siddharth.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. The next one comes, says, how do I get rid of the baggage of leadership?
The baggage of leadership comes because you think, I am doing this. In reality, you're not doing anything at all. The notion that I am a leader is highly, highly, highly detrimental. You know, In my earlier days, when I used to conduct leadership, online leadership, or online and live leadership fund, I'd ask, who here wants to be an inspiring leader? And virtually all the hands would go up. I want to be an inspiring leader. If you want to be an inspiring leader, you're already on the wrong path. Because think about it. When you say, I want to be an inspiring leader, it's all about you. I want to be an inspiring leader. And what you're really saying is, I want people to do what I would like them to do, which perhaps they don't want to do. So I've got to figure out how to get people to do what I want them to do when they don't want to do what I want them to do. In other words, I have to learn how to manipulate people. And that's not a very nice thing to do. I am being provocative here, but I'm being provocative here to make a point. If you want to be an inspiring leader, be personally inspired. Be personally inspired by a vision which brings a greater good to a greater community. And you have tremendous flexibility in defining both the greater good and the greater community. But when you can find such a cause and you can embed yourself in it so that you're willing to devote, if not your whole life, at least a big chunk of it, then you learn how to communicate that vision. And if you do that, you find that you become an inspiring leader by default. It's like Mahatma Gandhi. He did not set out to be an inspiring leader and inspire millions. And regardless of whether or not you agree with his political views and some of the action that you take, one thing is indisputable. And the thing that is indisputable is that he was able to get tens of millions of people to look beyond their narrow concerns and be involved in a giant endeavor, the endeavor to free India from colonialism. He did not set out to do that. He simply said the passport laws are unjust and I will not let them stand. And later on, the British must leave and they must leave as friends. And that focus eventually led him to become the icon of millions, even 70 years after his assassination. So if you want to be an inspiring leader, first be personally inspired. And after being personally inspired, learn how to communicate your vision. And when you communicate that vision, you find far, far many more people ready to follow you. But also understand, and this is really important, that if you think I am being an inspiring leader and I am having this impact, you're simply letting your ego take a ride. And ultimately, that will be a downfall. Instead, think, the universe is acting through me. If you're a person of faith, you can say Krishna is doing it, Allah is doing it, Christ, Jesus is doing it. That's just fine. You are an instrument through which work is being done. You are not the doer. And as you really get embedded into that, you will find that there is no burden in leadership. It is a privilege for which you should be immensely grateful. Next one, Siddharth.
The next one is really interesting, Dr. Rao. So I'm going to summarize the question a little bit. It talks about how do I become aware of my mental models when I'm in a rough patch? And the second part of the question is, a lot of times when there's a natural response, I get a lot of satisfaction. And how will I get that satisfaction if I become aware of my mental models?
Okay. The first part is, as I said, the problem is not that you have mental models. The problem is that you're not aware that you have mental models. So if you're not aware of your mental models, how the hell can you figure out which they are and how they're causing you problems? So I would strongly advise you to get a copy of my book, Are You Ready to Succeed? And it's available on Flipkart and Amazon India. And in the first part of that book, I describe how you can put a group of people together with whom you can go on this journey. And since many of you are teachers and they work at the same school, you may be able to form such a group within your school itself. The thing is, you are blind to your mental models, but somebody outside can instantly spot your mental models. And if you're open to hearing them, you will discover the blind spots that you have been ignoring in your life so far. But you can't do this randomly. There is a procedure by which you have to do it. I'll outline some of the important steps there. You have to pick people who you know are well disposed towards you, in whom you have a high degree of trust. You have to pick people who are themselves ready to go on a journey of growth. And there's certain other things that are important. So if you do it in that way collectively, and you put together a group and you start articulating your mental models, they can see the mental models you have that are holding you back that you're not even aware of. And you start building from there. Next
Thank you.
question.
So there's another question on how to. There are a couple of questions on how to deal with the mental chatter, but I think you've answered it. Would you like to take that again, or should I go to the next one?
Go to the next one because I think I did address that in sufficient detail.
Yes, yes. So the next one is is an interesting one. How to not expect things from anyone.
That is an extremely good one. And the point is, you can't not expect things from someone because that's something that happens automatically. But what you can do is you can become aware of the fact that you are expecting things. And when I come home and I'm tired after a hard day's teaching, my partner should have food ready. And one day the partner does not have food ready and you get all angry and upset. And you can recognize that the reason this is happening is because you have expectations. We have expectations all the time. We have expectations of our colleagues, our bosses, our spouses, our children. So it's fine to have expectations, but recognize that you have expectations. And when they are not fulfilled, you can determine, the fact that my expectation is not fulfilled, am I going to let that ruin my day? And if you look at it analytically that way, you'll say, this is so silly, I won't. You have to go to work and you normally go to work by auto rickshaw and one day the auto rickshaw doesn't come and you try to hail others and they don't come and you get all hot and flustered. Ask yourself, am I going to let this ruin my day? Yeah, you'll have to do what you have to do, but will I permit this to have power over my day? Will I let it ruin my day? And if you ask yourself that, the answer, of course, is no. And you might even laugh at these situations which are bothering you right now. Constantly ask yourself that question. My expectations were not met, so am I going to ruin my day? And if you look at it that way, you'll find that very little has the capacity to really ruin your day. Next question, Siddharth.
Sometimes we are not able to satisfy our boss, and that keeps a guilt within us. How to deal with such a guilt?
How to deal with such a guilt is something that I addressed earlier. Always see yourself as the instrument of a larger cause. To the extent possible, I'm getting into the space where I am not doing it. Krishna is doing it, Allah is doing it, Jesus is doing it. I'm just being the instrument, but I'm being the very best instrument that I am capable of. And you embed yourself in that. And if you embed that in yourself, in that, and your boss is unhappy, that is a learning opportunity. What is it that I did in my capacity as instrument that was short of what the expectation was? And is there any way in which we can work together collaboratively to rectify that? Never see anyone, your boss, principals, whatever, never see them as enemy. Look upon them as partners, and together you are going to solve the issue that has arisen. That is a journey that you have to make, and that journey is entirely between your ears. But the more you embed yourself in number one, everything that I am doing is as an instrument of this larger force, and at any given time, I am doing the best that I can. Lincoln, in his second inaugural address, put it beautifully. He said, with malice towards none, with charity for all, I will do the best. I will do what I'll do the best as God guides me to do the best. Notice it doesn't say I will do the best. It said, as I am given to see the best. And what I'm given to see the best at this time may be different from what it is tomorrow. And in that case, tomorrow I will do what I am guided to do tomorrow. But if you do that, then you will find that you're in a position to talk about your shortcomings, say, how can we do better? Next, Siddharth.
How can I discover the purpose of my life?
You do not discover the purpose in your life. You create the purpose in your life. Purpose in your life is not like a seashell. You're walking along the beach and one day you see the seashell. There's my seashell. You do not discover the purpose in your life. You build, you create the purpose in your life. And let me assure you, the purpose in your life is right where you are. When I was teaching at top business school, thousands of students would come up to me and say, Professor Rao, you're so passionate about what you do. I want to be passionate like that. How do I discover this passion, this purpose? And the short answer is you don't discover it. You create it. And the way you do that is by recognizing that you're on a longer journey that I spoke about earlier. You're building the cathedral that I defined. You think you're out here and your purpose is to make a living, to make more money. Not so. Your purpose is to recognize that this is a journey that you're on. And the end of the journey is recognizing your true self, and your true self is pure awareness. In the Upanishads, it says Aham Brahmasmi or Tattvamasi. In the Bible, it talks about the kingdom of heaven. That is your journey. And in that journey, the role that you're playing is a role. Play it to the greatest ability you are capable of, but recognize that your ultimate journey is to recognize your true nature as pure awareness. And if you're embedded in that, you'll find that all of the problems you're grappling with, they drop away. Next, Siddhartha.
So I think a lot of us, because many of us are parents on this call, a lot of us feel that way. How can I overcome the thought that I'm not giving enough time to my kids?
That is always a perennial problem, and it's so all over the world. And I can't tell you to solve the problem, but I can help you ameliorate the problem. So, there was one of my students in a class that I was teaching at London Business School, and he had a son 8, 9 years old, about that age. And he was also going through a divorce. It was a not an acrimonious divorce, but it was also not a pleasant divorce, somewhere in between. And he said the concepts I got from creativity and personal mastery in my course, they were so powerful, they really changed my life. And I would like my son to benefit from that as well. So one day, when his soon-to-be ex-wife was outside the apartment, he was talking to his son, and he said, "You know, Daddy and Mommy are not going to be together anymore." Yes. "You know, Daddy and Mommy are going to be in different cities. His wife is going to relocate to her home country." He said, "Yes. Can you think of some way in which this could actually be a good thing rather than a bad thing?" And the two then got into a game. And he said, "Well, when I'm with Mommy, I'll be in the countryside, and I can go biking, and I'll have a dog, and have a fun life. And when I come to the city, then I'll be with Daddy, and we can go see plays and do fun things." And he was very fond of plane rides. He said, "I'll have lots and lots of plane rides." And they went on like that for 10 minutes and became quite exciting. And my student heaved a sigh of relief and said, "This experiment really worked." And then he asked his son, "Well, what else can I do?" And the son looked at him and said, "I wish you would talk to me like you just did. Most of the time when you're with me, you're never there." And half the class was in tears at that point. So, what can I do more when I'm not spending enough? When you're with your children, be there. How much of the time when you're there, you find you're not really there because you're all preoccupied with your mental chatter and the stuff that's going on in your life. So consciously make it a point when with your children, be with your children. And when you do that, it will not completely ameliorate the work-life balance situation, but it will help a great deal. Next, Siddharth.
So I'll take last two, Dr. Rao.
Okay.
How can we reduce the influence of negative thoughts in a group?
Confront it immediately, Siddharth. When something comes up, state the feeling that it created in you and ask, is this what you meant to have happen? Don't do it confrontationally. Don't do it angrily. Don't let any of those emotions come to you. Just simply ask, this is the reaction I had to that comment. Is that what you meant to have? And it works across the board. You're having a squabble with your wife and or your husband, and partner says something, you say, "I felt very demeaned and hurt by what you said. Was it your intention to create such hurt?" And when you do that non-confrontationally, very often you will find that you can resolve the situation before it becomes a major problem or an issue. Next, Siddharth. And I think we've run over, so let's make that the last question.
So how do I encourage my children to write about their mental chatter? And how can they start looking at the situations with optimism?
Uh, that's again an excellent question, which you run into a lot. First, you cannot tell your children anything because whatever you say will come with daddy baggage or mommy baggage and will be rejected. So there are two things I would suggest. Number one, children may not listen to what you say, but they will always observe who you are. So if you want to share any of the concepts that I shared with you with them, don't try to tell them, be those concepts. And they will observe, and sometime, somewhere, they will pick up. I'll actually share three things. This is number one. The second thing that I would like to share is see if you can get into a conversation with them about somebody else. So one of your son's friends is having a problem, and you say, "Do you think if your friend, you tell your son, if you do you think if you tell your friend this, it would be of help?" So now the son is not resisting you because you're not talking about him. You're talking about his friend, and you're actually suggesting a way by which he could help his friend. So he's all agog. But children are smart and they can easily recognize if it helps their friend, then perhaps it could help them at all. Also. And the third thing actually works also, which is make it a game. You can tell your son or your daughter, look, mommy has this thing called mental chatter, and describe the mental chatter. And there's a problem with mental chatter because mental chatter takes you away from being present. And then you get into a game. Why don't you point out to me when I'm getting so going someplace else because of my mental chatter, or my mental chatter is making me angry or whatever. And if you point it out to me, I'll give you 10 rupees. And you'll be surprised at how much money you lose. But believe me, this is some of the best expenditure you can make. Because when your children become good at pointing out how your mental chatter is they also become how
Re-
their
Rekha
mental,
ma'am, can you please mute Rekha ma'am?
they also become aware of what's happening with them. So those are some things that I found extraordinarily useful. And lots of my students have told me that they found those tips useful. And I think with that, Siddharth, we are done. Is this session being recorded, by the way?
Yes, yes,
I would like you to share with me the chat box of this one.
sure.
And I would sincerely, if any of you found this useful, please go to my website, therawinstitute.com. And there is a big red button there saying join now. And if you put in your details, you will get my blogs. And you'll also get details about my programs. So if you liked it, I would encourage you to take that step.
Yes, and we will definitely have the library with a few books of yours, and I think
Yes.
that will be, we'll
I
definitely
would
do
say
that.
that you should get all of my books
Yes,
and you should have them stocked in the library. And in fact, Rupa is coming up with an Indian edition of my book. It should be released in October before Diwali. And however, the books are already available on Amazon, and look for them there.
and I'm sure with the engagement in this session, the team would really look forward to meeting you when you're in India next.
We'll make that happen.
Yes, all right. Thank you so much, Dr. Rao.
Thank
I think
you.
this
My pleasure,
phenomenal.
Thank you, Dr.
Nitin.
Rao.
And for the rest of you, it's evening for you. It's good morning for you. Have a absolutely terrific rest of your life. All the best.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a good night. Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you,
sir.
sir. Good night, sir.
You too have a very good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. Bye, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, and teachers for joining in. Good night.
Good night, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Ashwini ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. बोलिए.
Ma'am, will you share the feedback form?
No need of feedback form, I guess. But if it is referred by sir, I'll mail it to you. Message it to you in the WhatsApp groups.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.